you take a different view of whether looking at resumes for education and experience is the way to recruit. What are you looking for that sort of goes against the grain of that? I want the Ivy League education and 10 years in Treasury.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm super proud of kind of a change that I've made, is that regardless of your job title in Treasury, every person now innovates and experiments and creates and builds and solves problems. And that's a really big change in like Treasury 10 years ago when I first started, where you were just kind of hired to do the core job. And, we were seen more as a tactical team and not as much as a strategic team. And I think when recruiting, a lot of peers and other companies are focused on what you just said, like experience and education. But what I kind of found is like, if you do focus on just one thing, you tend to just get one type of person, and you can't just like have your traditional person. You really need a super adaptable team, I found. And so I don't place a lot of value on experience and education when I'm recruiting. Instead, I try to find if that person has grit. And so I'll define that as passion and perseverance and the ability to do what it takes to get the job done. And then people with that grit, they're super adaptable and they're very low maintenance and most importantly, super resilient. Like I have a very resilient team right now. And so when COVID happens, I mean, I didn't build my team, nor did I want resiliency because I predicted COVID happening and everyone having to adjust to this new way of life. I just wanted a super adaptable team because that's kind of what I need right now to, for us to innovate. But I mean, boy, did it sure come in handy when we're all now working remote and trying to innovate at the same speed, which is very difficult. And, we've won several awards during COVID. We've also won awards before COVID for some of our innovation, and having a really resilient, adaptable team is super important.
And having this perspective has allowed you to pick people for your team that others might not have. Can you give us an example of how like having more openness to different backgrounds has paid off for you guys?
I'll give you two examples, actually. A new one just from yesterday, can you believe it, is I do have a couple of people on leave right now. And so we do need a contractor to kind of come in temporarily to help us out. And I hired a person within 24 minutes into the interview. It's the first I've interviewed hundreds, maybe 150 people. And this is the first person like I could kind of walk in after 24 minutes. He was so passionate and his level of energy was just so high. And like his hobby was like investigating cryptocurrency releases. And like, it was just so fascinating. Just like the perfect kind of person that fits in with my team like perfectly. And yeah, super diverse, super talented, and they'll be starting in a few weeks, and I'll let you know how that goes later. But a second example is I once interviewed a candidate whose current position was stated as a security guard. And a lot of people would just, and let's just say that you did that as a person, like you had to take something temporarily and it was a security guard. Well, a lot of people would just show a gap in their resume, and then they'd show their last treasury or finance position on top of their resume, if you will. Well, I was so curious about that, and it took me a little bit of a while to sift through all the people to get to this person, but I decided to give them a call up randomly, just out of the blue, and interviewed the candidate. And this is a person that was super fascinating, super great background, worked at a sort of an investment company, working with both A-type people on a sales desk, doing some back office work, kind of in the investment space, but had a real strong passion for foreign exchange and foreign exchange risk management. And just, I think that like, if you're just focused on experience and education, like you would have never looked at this person, but this is a person that came into the organization as a treasury analyst and did great work, moved to senior analyst, moved up to principal analyst, and now is one of my treasury managers, and now runs his own team running a lot of our balance sheet tactical programs. So like, this is just a great example of someone that has grit and perseverance and did the right thing for their family and was kind of proud of it, really. And that's kind of that quality that you look for. Like, that's the kind of person that just rolls up their sleeves and gets it done. And as they lead, they sort of lead by example.
What other advice could you give to other people coming up in Treasury who are hiring and especially during COVID, perhaps struggling to find the right people. What qualities do you look for, and where do you look for them?
I think for us, it's really about asking the right questions. We do a lot of the behavioral interviewing, but we also ask a lot of kind of fun questions that pull out people's what they do in their downtime. And like, so some of the examples are like, tell me about the most complex problem you've solved. That's for me like my number one. I always ask that question because A, I really want to know what they think a complex problem is. And B, I want to know how they solved it and the ways that they did that. Because kind of understanding how they solved a problem in that scenario is I mean, every single day on the FX risk management team, like a new problem happens for the first time and they have to sort of think on their feet. And so we try to figure out how they've thought on their feet in the past. And another question we ask in the wording is really specific. It's, give me some examples of the last project you worked on that you loved. And the love part is important because we're trying to figure out what they're passionate about. Because you're not ever passionate about some random project that you didn't like or that you just liked. You're only really passionate and you really only lose track of time when you're working on projects you love. So that's really what we're looking for. And we also ask questions about like, well, if you were in a career outside of finance or treasury, like what would you be doing? Like, and then we give an example of what we would be like. For me, maybe that's like, well, I'm an amateur magician. Man, I would have loved to be a stage entertainer. And one of my team members once said, want to be a video game developer, things like that. So it's just, what's their energy level, how we're a real diverse team. And so it's just makes everything more fun.